You're listening to the Frequency and Flow podcast with Brie Kirk, episode number 41. In today's episode, I am speaking with Karen Bryson of Motivate the Muse, all about how she can best market her business and attract ideal customers using her 5-1 Mental Projector Design. So let's dive in. I was so excited going into this conversation with Karen because her business and her profession and her career is very different than anyone that I've ever brought on to this podcast. She is a professor, she is a prolific book author, and she is just branching out into her business of coaching and helping want to be and aspiring authors to write and publish their own books. She has a wealth of knowledge. I was so excited to talk to her because she's in a business that I don't know well yet. But what I was really intrigued about, I should say, from her application and when she decided to come on was that her and I have a lot of things in common within our human design. So we both are projectors, we both have a 5-1 profile, and we both have the fun 4323 Freak to Genius channel that connects the ajna to the throat. And so when she started telling her story and her journey, I just resonated so deeply with a lot of it, because even though it's not my exact path, like her actions and inspiration and how she kind of navigated this path that she's been on, I felt like it resonated so much with me. And what I really love talking about is she's someone who has had, I would say, her primary marketing that has worked for her thus far in her business has been word of mouth and referral. And so we talked a lot about how to bring that online in a way that when people do come to her, that don't come through that word of mouth channel, like they come to her already kind of knowing her, already understanding what she does and how she does it. And we really talked about not just her marketing in general, even though that was her question. We started talking about like how she positions herself as well, which is a key part of your brand strategy and your messaging strategy, and really playing into what parts of her design, like what parts of her marketing strategy and messaging to play up around given what her human design is. So it was a really fun conversation. Karen is so funny. She's so nice, so kind. And like I said, we had a lot in common and just continued to chat well after the recording ended. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Karen. Welcome to the Frequency and Flow podcast with Brie Kirk. Today I have a super exciting guest, Karen Bryson of Motivate the Muse. Karen, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for inviting me to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to chat with you. You are somewhat like a slightly different person than I've had on this podcast before in terms of who you serve, how you serve them, and what you do. So I'm really, really excited to get into this conversation. But before we do, I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey to where you're at, and a little bit about who you serve, how you serve them, and what you're looking for today.
So I've spent a lot of time doing a lot of things. Professionally, I am a university professor, so I teach. I am an author. I'm a USA Today bestselling author. I've written over 50 books. I'm also a podcaster. I have a podcast called the Curious Professor Podcast, which I absolutely love. I love the everything about podcasting really fits my personality and my style. And I got into wanting to serve others and really having a desire to start teaching and coaching, working with people who were either aspiring or struggling writers to help them to achieve their writing goals. I've always I don't want to say I've always found it easy to write, because obviously I've had my own times of struggle, and but I've felt like I've overcome those challenges and overcome those writing blocks, those times in my life where I felt like I wasn't producing to the level that I wanted to. So I really wanted to help other writers to achieve their writing goals and to really empower them to be the best writer that they can be and find the success that they wanted to find as writers.
Amazing. I am, yeah, I think this is exciting too because you're kind of at the start of this new phase of your career and your profession. So I would love it maybe if you described, actually, before we even dive into the specifics of the marketing and the business, tell everyone a little bit about your experience with human design thus far.
Well, it's really interesting because when I just so I'm a professor, so I love I love teaching, but I also love taking classes, and I like being in groups, and I like being coached as well as doing coaching. So I took a lot of classes to learn about coaching, to learn about creating content for people online, visibility coaching. So I've been a person who has been coached and been in mastermind groups and those types of things. So I was actually about a year ago in a group of aspiring coaches and women who wanted to become more visible online and learning how to market themselves. And one of the women in that group said something about being, she used the word Manny Gen, and I had never heard that term before. So I wrote it down and I looked it up and I was like, why have I never heard this term before? So I looked it up and it came, of course, I Googled it and it came up human design. I'm like, human design? Okay. It's very rare because of the type of person I am that there can be something that I've never heard of. And the fact that I had never heard of it, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. So that day, well, it was either later that day or the next day, probably within the next 3 days, I just spent like 25 hours online diving into human design and trying to figure out what it was and where my place in this world, this human design world was. And when I figured out that I was a projector, I was like, oh my God, so many things in my life make sense now. that I'm old. So if I had known this like 30 years ago, I would have saved myself so many heartaches and so much time that I did things that I would have had the knowledge, had I had the knowledge I have now, I would have done things a lot differently back when I was in my 20s. So it was like such an eye opener for me to discover this about myself, and particularly in midlife. Um, it opened up a whole new world of uh, knowledge about myself, but also possibilities of a way that I could be in the world that I hadn't been before. And also explaining so many things about me and my life and my relationships.
Oh yeah, I felt the same way. And the funny thing is I'll talk about this in a second, but you and I personally actually have a lot of things in common in our design that I think make a lot of sense. So as you were explaining your story, I was like, oh yeah. Oh yeah, like I just felt like I'm like, oh, this just hits me to the core a little bit. Like everything from like, oh, I went down this Google rabbit hole and came out 20. I'm like, oh, yep, that's me. That's this. And I'm like, that's this part of your design. And we'll get into this in just a second. But again, to kind of just help set the stage, tell me a little bit about the marketing that you're doing for your business now, or if you have anything that's kind of like, I guess, like where you're at, what you're doing, and I don't know, like if any, what's working best, maybe not, what doesn't seem to be working, just to kind of set the stage, and then we'll continue. We just continue to get a layer deeper, and we'll keep going.
So I've been implementing some of the things that so back when I first started really writing a lot and publishing books, I learned about marketing in regards to being an author and being a publisher and that type of marketing. So I've been trying to implement some of the strategies that I learned in that arena to the things that I want to do. Working with aspiring and struggling authors, helping them, empowering them, and helping them to achieve their goals as writers. Trying to implement some of the same things that I learned selling books, really.
Mhm.
And some of them work and some of them don't. So it's kind of hit and miss. And also, I wasn't a fantastic marketer. It's like 2012 when Kindle first, was becoming mainstream, and I was writing the right thing at the right time. It's like sometimes you just hit the right thing at the right time and you just explode. Well, I was fortunate enough that happened to me, that I was writing the right thing at the right time, and I didn't have to do really any marketing at all for a while. Then I did, once a lot of more people started writing, became more discoverability became more difficult. So I had to learn some techniques about writing. But for a while there, I did nothing but put books up and people bought them. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I've always kind of lucked into things. Like right now, all of the people I'm working with as a writing coach, I did nothing to find them. They just found me. So, I mean, I tend to attract people to me, which is great. But I mean, you can't sustain a business on, oh, I'll just wait for people to come to me. Maybe you can. I don't know. I haven't tried it. But I would like to be a little bit more proactive in what I'm doing, and really some techniques that feel good and align with who I am, and my human design. So that's really what I'm really searching for,
Mhm.
because there's definitely things that people do that feel, for lack of a better term, icky to me.
Yeah.
Sometimes some types of marketing techniques just aren't in alignment with who I am. Um,
Mhm.
I think it's important. Obviously, I like things that um, tend to really uh, bring forth being of service more so than we want to make money. There's quite a few people, and if that's your thing, that's your thing. That's not my thing, but there's a segment of the coaching industry that's really about, let's get the money, but
Yeah.
that's not me, and that doesn't feel good to me. I'm more about, how can I be of service to other people? Like, I know I could sell products that would sell, but should I just sell them because I know they'll sell if I don't think that they're going to be of the highest service to people? I
Yeah.
don't want to be in that ethical dilemma.
Mm-mm. I mean, it's really good, first of all, that you are aware of that. And so to get into it, Karen, you're a projector, but you're also a mental projector. Have you heard that? Do you understand what that is?
Yes, I understand a little bit about that. I'm also a 5/1. Uh, so that seems, yes, being a mental projector makes a lot of sense to me because I'm in my head all the time. Um, and I don't feel a connection really to the rest of my body, which is kind of odd. Before learning about being a mental projector, I always described myself as a head in a jar, because I felt like you could just cart around my brain and in a jar, and that would suffice. Like, that would be just as good as the body that I have.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
so
That's I've never heard that, but that just I'm not a mental projector, but my sister is, and that is also her to a T. So that's really funny. The reason what is interesting is the way that you described your process, where people just find you and people just come to you. Like, that's very projector ish, And I think in terms of your marketing, finding ways that help people find you without having to do that. Like, I think what you're saying with the things that feel really icky are like sliding into people's DMs and being like, hey, you need to work with me, or like going into other Facebook groups and saying, hey, you need to work, and like, just prodding people in an unsolicited way.
yeah.
And so I think what you're getting at, and like what, for me, is also, as a projector, what makes a lot, it makes a lot of sense. And what I've contemplated a lot is like, how do I be proactive enough to like help people find me? And so I know that you're on Instagram. I know that you have a Facebook group that that you actively post content in. And so when I think of, like where else that you could go, I like to think about if, because you're probably attracting people who are similar to you in how you maybe look up information. So you said like you were really big into Google, or like you really like to Google things, and you really, sometimes you go on YouTube for things, and so on and so forth. So to me, like, and I'll tell you, this is a part of my strategy as well, as like SEO and blog content is actually a huge
Mhm.
part of my strategy, which totally to me like makes sense for you because you're already a writer. So obviously, like writing comes really easy to you, or easier than most, I should say. I know it's not always easy, but and so that was kind of the first thing that came into mind, because blogs are something that you do once and it lasts forever, forever on your website and things like that. Um, have you ever thought? I know you don't actively have a website right now, but have you ever thought of that strategy for yourself?
Yeah, so my plan, my plan. I have a lot of plans, obviously, but it takes time to bring those into reality, right? To actually create the reality from your thoughts. So, yeah, what I eventually want to do is have a Motivate the Muse blog, a matching podcast, and a matching YouTube channel. So
Mhm.
I would have content on YouTube videos and have a podcast. I have 70, I interviewed 70 authors about overcoming writing blocks and writing struggles. And so I need to, within the next month or so, during my off term from my university job, get that book together and get that out. So I'm going to have a book, a
Yeah.
lead magnet book. I want to
Oh,
do free webinars. I really love doing video content and webinars. I'm talking to groups. So again, um, writing groups just come to me and invite me. I don't
mhm.
solicit I don't solicit writing groups, but I'm more than happy to give lectures and talks to writing groups. So like I've had 3 in the last month come to me and invite me to do talks. So that's a great way to get in front of
Wow.
writers.
Yeah.
Um,
How do you know how, or do you ask how they find you?
yeah, I do. Usually people tell me. So this friend of a friend heard about you from this other person is how it happens. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, that is great too, because that's the best type of referral you can get, and getting in front of, people who already are warm to you. Like that's fantastic. Um, I mean, to me, it sounds like the strategies that, I mean, you have effective strategies, and you are, because you have this like literal huge body and library of work that people can find, plus you have the networking and relationships. It's more about just, I think, you're doing the things that are more, what's the word I'm thinking of, like, more in the moment, the more relationship building. But to me, it just like, you just need that foundation, so that if someone does hear about you from a friend of a friend, because the first thing they're probably going to do is like Google you once they hear about you. And so, like, to me, of all the things you've talked about, I feel like getting even just a basic website, you could do like a one-page website and get that up there. Um, and I think what you're talking about in terms of like how, because you already have, well, you have a podcast. It sounds like you'd be starting a new podcast or
Yeah,
rebranding
I'm
your
gonna have
podcast.
yeah.
It'd be a
No,
new one.
yeah, it'll be a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and like repurposing. So this is similar to what I do. I record video. Well, I record, it's podcast first for me, but I also record video that I also turn into a blog post. And I do some things that are like, this specifically is for YouTube, or this specifically is a blog post kind of thing. But it's like, that to me has worked really well. And then because for me, it's all about, as a projector, especially, it's like all about the SEO platforms and just
Okay.
having that presence. Because if people are going to hear about you, or they want to Google like how to write a book, or what whatever
Right.
the things are that they're asking you, or like the first questions when you feel like they're an aligned client for you, it's like, what are the first questions that people are asking when they are, when it's the perfect time for them to find you, and
Right.
just create content around that. So because I feel like you have, it's it that is the stuff that gets you in front of people. And like, so when you do talk to them, I mean, they're already warm if they're coming from someone who's a friend of a friend or something like that. But if that will help you get in front of people who don't know you yet or don't have that personal reference. And I think that will help tremendously and save you a lot of energy so that when you do talk to people, they already at least know who you are and maybe what you do and things like that. And you can, I mean, and you can control your message a little. Like, it's great that you have friends of friends that are referring you, but you can also like control the message a little bit. Like, who are you really looking to work with? And you can really like get specific on that stuff.
Right. That's great. Yeah. That's helpful to know what to prioritize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Especially for, I mean, I just think, especially for you as a writer, especially as someone who, you know, because that seems to just, like my recommendation for marketing in general is like what flows the easiest. Like if you're going to have to create content, what flows the easiest? And I mean, I've talked, I think someone who I spoke to in a different interview, she's like, she's also a writer and she was trying to put her face on Instagram. And she was like, I can never get my captions short enough for Instagram posts. It's so frustrating. I'm like, then don't focus, like, you can be on Instagram, but make that secondary. Like, let your stuff flow. And like, what's the format that works best for that when it feels like so easy for you? And then adapt anything else where you want to be to what like as repurposed from what like your main piece of
Right.
content is.
Yeah. No, I think that's great because I can see how a blog post could be turned into a little video um, easily,
Mm-hmm.
and also have just a little meme on Instagram that could, connect somebody to the blog post.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you have another thing. Well, so I also am a 5-1. I also, another thing we have in common is we have this channel from our ajna center to our throat center. That's the 2343, the channel of structuring, also known as the freak to genius channel.
Which I love, by the way. I think that's one of the best things I ever heard. I was like, freak to genius, of course.
It's like,
How well does
uh,
that fit me? Yes.
I know. It's like you just come up with things out of thin air. And people, if they're not ready for it, you stun people and turn them away. But if it's in the right environment, people are like, oh, yeah, this is great. So when I was looking at your chart before we hopped on here, like when I think in terms of the specific content that really people come to you, like you said, you know, it's like playing into that 5-1 and playing into that freak to genius channel when people come to you, like what they're looking for from you. And I think you know this, but I feel like you could really like narrow your content is people are looking for your knowledge, they're looking for your processes, and they're looking for your unique perspective on things. And so I feel like you could get a little bold with your content, like as bold as you want to be. I'm not saying you need to like go out and say really controversial things for the sake of it, but I feel like you have unique perspectives maybe on this, like how to write, how to publish a book that are very unique to you. And I feel like that is what's going to help you stand out, especially when it comes to your content and what's going to pull people into you. And so I almost want to give you permission to be a little bit bold because you have that in your design.
Okay.
Um, Not just with the Freak to Genius channel, but also your incarnation cross is it's called the left angle cross of revolution. And it really is about being bold and transforming norms and like kind of doing things, you know, it's like, I mean, think about the word revolution, right? It's
Right.
like kind of individual, it's like novelty, individuality a little bit, um, transforming things, like making things like revolutionizing old structures and making them like new and fit society better, you know? And so I feel like between that, like what I see in your design when I'm looking at it holistically is like to give you that permission to just, you know, say like this is what normal people do with this process, or like this is what most people will teach you, but I'm different. Like this is my take on it. I mean, say it however you want, but like, you know,
Yeah.
it's like what makes you different, what makes you unique. I think especially like because we had talked about this slightly before, but like because you serve so many different people and like getting really clear on like, you know, are there different processes for that, or does everything boil down to one? It's like the same process, just applied slightly differently depending on the audience that you're speaking to. Um, I feel like you could really, like, that would make for, and that would make for fun content too.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes so much sense.
um, yeah, because like you said before we hopped on, when we chatted a little bit, that you like to be a little cheeky, and I'm like, I could almost see that like coming through on some of the content that you put together.
I love that you used cheeky. I think I would use a slightly more vulgar word, but yeah, cheeky's great.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, be however feels authentic. And I don't know if, especially because you come from more, it's like university is very traditional and you need to be very, polite and very whatever. And it's like, as much like, I feel like this new phase that you're going, where you're like doing more of the teaching, it's like, I, I feel like you have room, or it's like, I almost invite you to just play with, like, what does the authentic me sound like versus like the me I feel like I have to be, and obviously within reason, because you don't want to like completely scare your administrators at the university, but like
You want to go
I
be more of a genius than a freak.
like, yeah, just, I don't know, like I feel like you could, it's like, just because the whole point, like you said, of what you want with marketing is doing what feels authentic and what feels fun.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this is a really good opportunity, not just with your marketing content, but like as you build out your program. And why don't you actually, I don't know if you explained, well, you explained an overview. I'm curious, like within the program that you're building out, what are the main, like, I guess, big steps or process, or like, or what's the main outcome of it? Is it like getting clear on the book? Is it getting your book on Amazon? Like, what is the
So
big steps for it?
the thing that I'm finding as I'm working with more people is that confidence gap is the main thing that people need to overcome
Mm-hmm.
in all steps. Like finding people really know intuitively what they want to write, but being able to have that confidence in themselves and in what they have to say and in putting that out into the world to say, okay, this is what I really want to write, even if other people tell me it's weird, or you know if I'm a freak for wanting to write this is really what's in my heart. Being able to have the confidence to say, yeah, this is what I'm going to write, then having the confidence in yourself to be able to put words on a page. I'm working with people who haven't even gotten to that step yet, where they feel good enough about themselves and what they have to say and the value they have to give to the world, that they haven't gotten to that point of being able to put themselves out there, even to themselves, because no
Mm-hmm.
one's reading it right now but them. And then getting to a point, once you're in the flow and have connected to that, whatever you think that thing is that's helping the muse, connected to that creativity inside you or outside of you, wherever it's coming from, that you've got that flow going. Then once you have that draft, and the draft could be a book or it could be a screenplay or whatever that thing is that you're writing, a stage play, then you know yeah, you could keep it in a drawer, but if you're going to put it out into the world, if you're going to start pitching it to movie producers, or you want to publish it, or you want to send it to agents to be published by a traditional publisher, whatever that format is that you want to put your story or your stories out into the world, then having that confidence in yourself to be able to take that next step. That's when other people start to see it. You have an editor, you have beta readers, or whomever is that next step of putting it out into the world and really making yourself vulnerable to an audience of more than just you is huge. That's a big thing for a lot of people, to take it from the drawer and put it out into the world. That's like,
Yeah.
pushing a newborn baby out for the first time in the world. You don't want people to, you know, look at you and say, God, that's an ugly kid. Oh my God, because you're in love with your baby.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm over here in awe because the way that you describe, it's like your process aligns with your design. And I'm like, that's what people come to you for, is like, what is your process for creativity? So you have the defined head, defined ajna, defined throat as the mental projector. So to me, that's like all about your process for creativity, your process for process is it, and like and how you do things, and then your process for getting it out into the world, through your throat. And so I mean, I feel like, and taking that as the 5-1, where 5 is really about solutions and also about kind of processes, but like streamlining things, making things like more digestible for people. I'm like, this is very, very aligned with what your design is. So I think as you start promoting, it's like what we've been talking about so far is just helping people find you. But when you start promoting the program, I absolutely would focus on like, what is your process for creativity, for, getting things out into the world. And like you said, through those big, like, what is your process for getting the confidence to take the next step? It's like thinking very, very process oriented, or very like step by step, is like, that kind of terminology. Or like, it doesn't have to be that terminology, but in terms of like, you know, what people come to you for is they might have all this, like you said, they have this big idea, they have this inspiration. There's a lot of, people will come to you with like, because you have so much openness at the bottom of your chart. So I'm like, people are going to come to you that have a lot of like intuition, a lot of emotional intuition, like knowing intuition, a lot of, like energy, like life force energy, a lot like, and then, it's like, and they are magnetized to you to like streamline things, like put like ground it in reality almost, and so I feel like really playing on that messaging, and like that being the way that you describe this program, in terms of it, like, I feel like that is really going to resonate with people too.
Yeah, right now I'm saying that I provide practical wisdom. I really like that because
Mm-hmm.
those two words to me really clearly define the practicality, but also the wisdom and guidance and wayfinding
Yeah.
for people who, yeah, who have a desire and may not have a focus or may not have confidence or belief or,
Mm-hmm.
really, yeah, giving them direction and guidance and empowerment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think you could even, if you ever do like a sales page, I know right now a lot of your stuff's kind of word of mouth and referral, but if you're ever like making a sales page, or even, you know, like writing in an email that when people, it's like a templated email when people reach out to you, but it's like even getting into the detailed outline of like what each section of your process is. And just like, I feel like getting into more of the details is like, that's when people find you, that's what they like, because that's what they need. And
Yeah.
they might not realize they need it, but that's what they need, like, because not a lot of people too have that defined head energy, or you're in a minority there. And so a lot of people are just bombarded with ideas and creativity, and they don't know where it's coming from, and it's a really inconsistent thing for them, myself included. That's how I am. And so you being able to just like, this is my process when I get an idea, this is my pro, this is like how I manage this, or like this is how I take all that stuff that's coming, and like, get it, ground it in reality a little bit. And so I feel like they're like that is the type of people that you'll be attracting most and attracting best, and will be most transformed by the work that you do too. And so I really feel like playing that up throughout your marketing, from the blog posts or your Facebook group all the way through when you're talking to someone who's going to come into your program, I think is going to be really important.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, do you have, I mean, is there anything we've talked about today that you feel like there's any lingering questions, or anything we didn't cover? I know we talked about some specifics. Just want to make sure that you have, I don't know, like an action plan, or like what you think your next steps are in terms of priorities, before we hop off here.
No, you gave me some great tips and great ideas, and also gave me a process to follow. Start with the website, start with blog posts, and then, move out from there. Because, I tend to have a lot of grandiose ideas, but then when you have grandiose ideas and a lot of things you want to do, finding what's the priority, what's the best thing to start with can be very helpful.
hmm That's where my design comes in. That's definitely what I know. It's funny. I'm like that's the manifestation of my freak to genius for sure. um, but this is amazing. I'm really excited. I think this is like where you're heading and what you're just I think really, yeah, it's just getting a simple website. It doesn't have to be crazy. I think a lot of people get overwhelmed with a website. They think it has to be a lot. And I'm like, it can be one page with a blog section. And, as long as people know how to get a hold of you, that's great. and like what you stand for and what you do and your experience, it's like that can all be in one page.
Yeah.
Um, and just so I'm really excited as you start to build that out. I think that's going to get you a lot of traction. That's going to allow people to come to you, which is super, super important, not just as a projector, but as the mental projector. You don't have any energy centers defined. So it's like being really mindful of where your energy goes is more important for you than almost anyone in the world, any other type. So I think just, yeah, continuing to think about things going forward where it's like what you do sticks. It's like whatever type of content you do, that it's something that has either SEO value or it's something that you can always refer back to, or like send people to a video or send people to a blog post, or it's something, it's like content that lives on. It's not just like I know I personally struggle with Instagram sometimes because I'm like, yeah, most posts have a 24-hour lifespan. And so that's why I personally have shifted my marketing content, like how I do things quite a bit and focusing more on the things that have the longer lifespan so that, it's like my energy is used wisely. There we go. That's
Yeah,
what I was
no,
trying
that
to
makes
say.
so much sense because I've been in classes with visibility coaches who are on that train of, and it does work for someone who has a tremendous amount of energy. Oh, do 6 Instagram reels a week,
Oh my
do,
gosh.
you know,
That sounds exhausting.
I was in a course that was the thing, like
Yeah.
you have to be doing an Instagram reel, at least 5 a week and be on Instagram 7 days a week. And, all doing all the things, otherwise you won't be visible and people will never find you. And, this rhetoric of things, I think a lot of people, when they find something that works for them, then that becomes the thing that they think will work for everyone, not realizing that everyone is different and people have to find the thing that works for them and their energy and their alignment and their values and their their uniqueness in every way.
hmm
For me, yes, I'm in Instagram. I maybe do now 2 a week and it feels so much better. I mean, that train of 6 I was spending so much time doing these Instagram posts. Did it help? I don't think so. I'm I'm getting just as many listens on my podcast as I did when I was posting 6 times a week. I'm getting just as many followers a day as I did when I was doing that many posts. So, yeah, maybe it works for some people who have that as, you know, that are aligned with that kind of energy, but that wasn't my energy and that wasn't out working for me, and it caused me more stress than it did anything else, and that's not a good energy to be in when you're constantly stressed. So, yeah.
No. You can't I always say you can't copy and paste someone else's energy and just like blindly and accept that to be your own. And so that is the thing that I personally kind of stand for because I tried that too at one point and it's hard because a lot of people who do those programs are the generators and the manifesting generators that have that kind of energy. And so it did work for them. And that's great. And they're lit up by being on Instagram 7 days a week, but that's not for everyone. And even if you are like a generator or manifesting generator and you have the energy, but if you hate Instagram, like it doesn't make sense for you to be on Instagram. Your energy is going to go where you're excited to be. So the key is just to do things that excite you or that feel easier. Like it's not going to be easy every day. We all know that, but like what are the things that it's easier for you to put yourself out there and finding ways to do that and like that are sustainable and that like feel good, and you can craft or repurpose or like then from there like turn it into whatever you want. But it's like the key is just to find what people know when your energy doesn't feel good. If you're on Instagram and you hate it, like people can sense it without without you saying it. So it's always important to just make sure that you're somewhere, you know you're putting your energy into what excites you or what feels easy to you, and go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. It has to be fun and it has to feel good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, I feel like we've hit a pretty good, point here. But before we wrap up, I just want you to share how people can find you, and just anything if they want to continue working with you. How can they find you, and how can they work with you?
I will be having a website called motivatethemuse.com. But you can also find me in my Facebook group, Motivate the Muse, where I'm very active. I also have an Instagram, Motivate the Muse.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Karen. This was so much fun.
Thanks. Thanks for inviting me today.
How awesome was that conversation with Karen? In true 5-1 defined ajna, defined through action, I feel like we got really into detail really quickly and got a lot of things accomplished in terms of figuring out where she needs to take her business, the next steps of her business, and how she can effectively market her business as a projector, especially a mental projector. So I feel like that was like, for some of you, that might have been very in the weeds, but if you're here now, I hope you really got some value out of that. One of the best things about what I do is crafting the conversation to the person who I'm speaking to, and being a little bit of a chameleon in that way. But like you saw, Karen and I had very similar elements to our design, or some like commonalities. So I felt like I was speaking to someone who understood me pretty well on that, and we just got really deep. But it was so much fun, and I hope you and got something from that, even if you're not a projector, even if you're not a mental projector, even if you're not an author or author coach such as Karen. I think there's a lot of valuable things in terms of creating a sustainable, consistent, and marketing strategy that you're actually excited about creating content for. So if you're looking for more guidance yourself as you integrate your own human design blueprint into your business, you can actually start with some of the free and low cost resources that I have, including the free workshop series, Human Design Marketing Strategy and Business Alignment. It's a couple workshops and a PDF guide and some other supplemental videos that help you align, take the beginning steps to align your business and align your marketing strategy to your human design. It's a free workshop series, and you can find the link below in the episode description. And if you learned something new or resonated with what I said today, I would absolutely love to meet you. You can share your favorite part of the episode on your Instagram stories and tag me at Bree Couric. Or you can just send me a DM to say hello and share what you learned or resonated with on this episode. I cannot wait to hear from you.